Part 137. The Raid on the Banu Quzaa. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah stipulated that both sides were free to create alliances, but that the rules of the treaty would apply to those tribes too. Members from amongst the Banu Quzaa accepted Islam, and the tribe made an official alliance with the Prophet. The Quraysh also made an alliance with the Banu Bakr, one of the few remaining pagan tribes in the vicinity. The Quzaa and the Banu Bakr were historically engaged in intermittent conflict similar to that of the Aus and Hazraj before the advent of Islam. This conflict was subdued after they joined the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, but the Banu Bakr eventually raided a caravan from the Quzaa. Before they did so, they sought permission from the Quraysh, explaining that they desired revenge for historic deaths. The Quraysh not only gave permission, but actively participated, as high-ranking tribesmen such as Suhail ibn Amr and Safwan ibn Umayyah supplied the Banu Bakr with weapons. The Banu Bakr then set off to launch a surprise attack against the Quzaa on the outskirts of Mecca. However, some of the Quzaa were awake, and the raid did not go according to plan. A typical raid would target livestock and wealth, and one or two deaths may occur through collateral damage. Women and children were always off-limits as per tribal honor. However, as the Quzaa were awake and ready to defend themselves, carnage ensued, and over 20 people amongst the Quzaa were killed, including women and children. This was a very significant loss in the context of a single tribe. Moreover, one member of the Quzaa fled and was pursued until he reached the confines of the Haram. He then turned around and said,
"I am in the Haram! Fear your God! Fear your God!"
The assailant replied,
"There is no God today."
He then killed him inside the sacred land. News spread rapidly, and the chieftain of the Banu Quzaa arrived in Medina with 40 delegates, requesting assistance from the Prophet. The chieftain, Amr ibn Salim, recited a page-long monologue of the most eloquent poetry urging the Prophet to help. He cited his common ancestry with the Prophet, as well as the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. He then referred to historic treaties between the two tribes. The Banu Quzaa were the ruling tribe of Mecca for 300 years before Qusay wrestled power back into the lineage of the Quraysh. The two tribes remained on amicable terms, but Abd al-Muttalib eventually codified an alliance between them, pledging their allegiance to one another indefinitely. Amr ibn Salim continued to implore the Prophet,
"They slaughtered us while we were bowing in prayer and in prostration."
The Prophet was moved by his speech and replied, "You shall be helped, O Amr ibn Salim." The raid on the Banu Quzaa was a direct violation of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Most scholars of Islamic history explain that the Prophet marched into Mecca as a direct result of this raid, but the likes of Ibn Hajar comment that the Prophet first tried to negotiate with the Quraysh, who refused, thus leading to the conquest. In a narration reported from a successor, the Prophet wrote a letter to the Quraysh, demanding that they cut off ties with the Banu Bakr and pay blood money for the deceased. The Quraysh refused both demands, but in an unprecedented move, Abu Sufyan traveled to Medina to negotiate.